We are on to Chapter 4. We can see what kind of deal Rene has made. I'm glad you came back for more. As Rene made her way down the mountain, she smiled. She waited until civilization came into view before pulling over to read its contents. It simply said, Nicholas Brennan, Richmond, Virginia, the 7 Restaurant and Bar. Rene put the note into her console and began to think of all the possibilities this could mean. She frowned at the location because it was a 6-hour drive. She would have to think about this. She already knew her curiosity wouldn't let her ignore any of this, but she would have to figure some things out. The simplest thing, like gas money, was going to be a challenge. There was nothing extra after the regular monthly bills devoured her paychecks. She would have to think this through. Rene put the note in her jewelry box where she kept all the most valuable things she owned. Days went by, and she could think of nothing else. Rene folded and unfolded the paper until the creases were ragged. She thought of ways to make this trip happen, but even one day, missed from work, would create a hardship for the household. Rene found no peace from the constant thoughts. So she did what any poor person did. She applied for every credit card she could find. Finally, after several days, they began to arrive. She now had 3 cards from the 3 heavy-hitter companies, and she was feeling somewhat better. She had never been one to use a card because that was just another bill she would struggle to pay, but she felt like this was a necessary evil. Rene planned her trip to Richmond and mapped out her route. Her only regret was that Anna would have to stay behind with her grandmother. Anna's school was still in session, and she loved school. Rene wouldn't take her away from something she loved, just to chase down someone who probably didn't exist anyway. She planned to drive to Richmond, get disappointed, and drive back. The only expenses would be her gas and food along the way. When doing some quick research, Rene found that the 7 really did exist. She found that the owner's name was indeed Nicholas Brennan. What kind of scam were they pulling? What could be the endgame they wished to see? Maybe they were tired of people believing the mountain witch's lies. Maybe they wanted to teach people a lesson about seeking them out. Rene didn't know, but she was going to find out. She was determined to go back to the witches and do their deed if it turned out that they had made her go to Richmond for nothing. Nothing was just what she expected. After getting Anna settled at her grandmother's, it was time to set off. Rene decided to use this trip as a mini vacation. She stopped here and there, taking the time to smell the roses, as they said. Rene did regret the lies she had told her mother and Anna. She had convinced them that this was a training seminar and that she wasn't sure how long it would take. Rene was such an honest person that they never questioned her. She explained that the hotel she worked for would give her extra training if she did well. As a housekeeper and front desk clerk, she found the option of moving up to hotel management very appealing. This story was very believable to the unsuspecting pair. Life would proceed as normal for Anna, and if nothing else, Rene could mark this down as a great adventure. She wasted no time when she arrived at her destination. She pulled her car right into the parking lot of the 7. It was still early, so it was pretty quiet. She made a quick evaluation of her traveling state and decided a brush-up of her wind-blown hair and fresh lipstick would do wonders. She slipped on her 1 pair of heels and went inside for some well-needed dinner. She wanted to scope out the place too, and she thought that there was no harm in killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The 7 was very classy and elegant. Rene wasn't sure what she had been expecting, but this was a pleasant surprise. It was in an older building, so everything had an air of sophistication. Crystal chandeliers hung over the dining area. The wooden tables covered with fine linens lined the space. All the servers were crisp and neat. Everything seemed so elegant. Rene asked to be seated near the bar so she would have a better view of the entire space. The first visit bore no fruit. Rene got the lay of the land and ate a very delicious meal. She hoped it wouldn't take very long to find the elusive Mr. Brennan. She decided to enjoy everything about this very unusual vacation. Her hotel was on a busy little street. Many shops and hobby stores were there for her to browse through. It was a charming, older area of town. Somehow, her thoughts always returned to her goal. She wondered what in the world was going to come of this. She couldn't wait to find out. Every day, Rene made her way back to the restaurant for dinner. On her fourth day of stalking, she noticed a man she hadn't seen before. He was standing behind the bar, flipping through the pages of a menu. He was very dapper in his navy blue suit. After studying this man for a while, Rene was sure this was the owner. He seemed to be giving directions and had an air of authority about him. She made her way up to the bar and placed herself close. She assumed her position and began to do the only thing she knew to get a man's attention. She stared at her drink as if lost in thought. She flipped her long auburn hair and glanced up from time to time. "Bingo!" He walked over. "How are you today? Is there anything we can get for you?" he asked. "Oh, no, thank you. I may need a refill," she said as she giggled and pushed her empty white wine glass toward him. Before she knew it, a beautiful lady set her drink in front of her with a huge smile. "We are the Brennans. I'm Nick, and this is my wife, Victoria." He gave a loving look in his wife's direction. "Call me Tori," his wife said, extending her perfectly manicured hand in Rene's direction. Rene took it, and after regaining her composure, said, Rene Reed." The two looked at each other briefly before Nick asked, "You're new to our city, aren't you?" "Yes, I am. I'm here on a vacation of sorts. Some ladies from back home said I might enjoy my stay here." Rene took a sip from her drink and took this time to reposition herself from her flirtatious posturing. "And where is that?" Tori asked, wiping the bar down with a towel. "I'm from way up in the mountains of Virginia, just an old country girl." The silence seemed odd, but the conversation began quickly enough. "How did you find our little piece of heaven?" Nick asked, holding his hand out, gesturing to their lovely business. "Well, to be honest, those ladies I told you about said I should find this place in you." She sat staring in her glass, unsure what his response might be. "These women wouldn't happen to be the Cox ladies now, would it?" Nick didn't seem to be unnerved at all. "Yes." This is all Rene could say to that. "Well, any friend of theirs is a friend of ours," the bubbly wife answered. "I think maybe we should meet later in private to speak of any matters they felt like we could help with, don't you?" Nick said as he absent-mindedly dried a glass with a cloth. Rene almost thought he had a devilish glint in his eyes. "Okay, I really don't want to be a bother. Whenever is good for you is good for me," Rene answered, trying to seem as though she wasn't dying inside to know what in the world was going on here. So how were these people connected to the backwoods Cox family? What common thread could there possibly be? "How about 10, after the busy time is over?" Here, Tori seemed genuinely excited about the opportunity to have a guest. "That's great," Rene answered. These people were not at all surprised by her presence. They seemed to have done this before. She could only imagine what the rest of the evening might hold. Rene spent the rest of her evening in complete anxiety. She had no idea what direction the conversation might take. She really didn't understand the end game for the Brennans or the Coxes, but she planned to find out. However irrational the Coxes' delusion was, what did the Brennans have to gain? How were they connected to the fabric of her mountain? What strings would need unraveling to uncover the truth? 10 o'clock finally arrived, and Rene took her seat at the bar. The couple emerged from the back room behind the bar right on time. "So glad you came back," Tori smiled and patted her hand. "Come on up," Nick said, gesturing with his hand to the staircase positioned against the back wall. Their home was above the business, and it was nothing like she expected. In contrast to the dimly lit intimacy of the restaurant, their home was bright and cheerful. It had almost a sterile quality to it, having stark white walls and stainless steel accents. The group settled in a very comfortable den. Rene could smell freshly cut flowers and the fresh scent of pine. Rene assumed it was an infuser as there were no flowers, and the pine scent must be a cleanser of some kind. "We know why the Coxes sent you here, but we want to hear it from you." Nick blurted it out like it was the most natural thing in the world. "There isn't much of a reason to go a long way around either. Just tell us the truth. It will save us all a lot of time," he continued. Not knowing exactly how much the ladies had told them, Rene just started at the beginning and ended with the fundamental core of the reason for her visit. She never wanted to lose another child, not ever. And if there were anything in this world to stop it, she would do it. Rene explained that the ladies felt they owed her for some sin they had done to her ancestors. She had to admit she took advantage of that when they offered to help her. Their guilt for their past wrongdoings had landed her with the knowledge. This knowledge could save her from more pain. So, they didn't tell you anything about us? They didn't tell you exactly what you would get when you entered this agreement? I'm sure they didn't, or you wouldn't be here right now, Nick said, moving to refill all our glasses yet again. No, only that you could give me what I need. What you need and what you might want are two very different things. If you knew exactly what you were asking, I'm sure you would think differently about it. Can I ask you something before we go any further? Why, saying anything about this is real, would you do anything for the Coxes? How do you even know them? You don't seem to run in the same circles, to say the least. Rene moved to the end of her seat, hoping for an answer. A smile appeared slightly on the faces of both Nick and Tori, and they took each other's hand. He stroked the top of her hand with his thumb as she looked longingly back at him. I know they told you they were from a different time. Well, so are we. Many years ago, while I was away at war, I received word that my beloved Victoria had come down with a fever. They didn't think she had very long and wanted me to come home to say goodbye if there was any way for me to do so. When I asked my superiors, of course, they said no, so I ran away. I became a deserter that day, but I would not let my Victoria leave this earth without saying goodbye to my only love. Luckily, we were not too far away from the mountain, so I got home pretty quickly. I found Victoria just as they said she was. She was on the brink of death. I loaded her in my father's wagon and took her to the Cox women. Everybody was upset that I had stolen her in the middle of the night, but I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. I had to try everything. Let's just say that the Cox women gave my Victoria a potion that could restore her. It was made from the ashes of a dead boy. The only thing they asked was that I drank it too. They asked us to stay there to see what would happen, and we did. Thankfully, Victoria was not in her right mind and not even conscious most of the time, but I was. I can't even begin to tell you how horrible it was. I knew I was dying. I thought those mountain witches had hexed us because I wanted to save her, but as you can see, they did save us. But there were consequences for this, as you might know. We will never grow old, and we will never die. We live on the life's blood of those who will. Modern times have given us resources to do it more humanely, but it wasn't always like that. We are not the first of our kind, but we had no one to teach us the ways. The witches only wanted to see what their power could do. They were trying to find a way to bring back a loved one who had long since crossed that bridge of death. There was no saving their loved one, but they saved us. We would do anything for those ladies. We have done this before for them. They only help those who are truly worthy or those they think they have wronged in some way. We help anyone they send to us. We know the agreement you made with these ladies. We know what they asked you to do, and I hope for your sake and theirs that you will do it. Rene felt as though she couldn't breathe. Her heart was pounding in her ears. Okay, so what you have described to me is... Rene couldn't even bring herself to say the word. It was too crazy. It was totally absurd. She spoke so quickly she barely understood herself. It seemed the couple had no trouble following her, though. We don't want to draw this out any longer than necessary, Nick said, sitting back comfortably in his seat. If this is what you want for your daughter, we require she not go through it alone. We will first give you the gift, and when she is mature enough in both body and mind, we will grant her the gift, Nick continued. What? No, I'm not here for myself. I don't want it. I only want her to be safe. Rene felt panic rise in her body, and she jumped from her seat. If you want Anna to be safe until she has matured, then you will have to be strong enough to ensure that she is. If you take this gift, you will be able to protect her in ways you have never dreamed possible. Tori patted Rene's hand soothingly. You want forever with your baby. We can give that to you. When Anna is 25 years old, We will revisit this with her, but you must learn and grow in the gift until then. Give her the opportunity for a normal life, even if it is for a short time. Give her body and mind time to mature, so she is a woman and not a teenaged girl forever, Nick explained. Rene soaked in every word they shared. She listened to every step of the process, which seemed to be quite simple, that one would think it would be more challenging to change the very makeup of another human being. First, the gift's recipient would drink from the donor, and then the donor would drink from the recipient. Finally, death would come to the recipient, and they would be immortal when they awoke. There were apparently many ways one could transform into an immortal. The change could be done by a spell, like with the Brennan's case, or by a bite, like what they'd planned for Anna and me. But there were also what Nick called nature's vampire. These were apparently very old vampires who just appeared in nature as an anomaly. No one seemed to know exactly how they came to be, but they were the most powerful vampires. Unfortunately, they were also the most elusive. Nick and Tori had never met or heard of anyone who actually knew any of these wonders, so that seemed a little sketchy to Rene. Rene knew she would never risk Anna's life unless she knew the outcome firsthand. The idea of inflicting any pain on her child was unthinkable. Anna not only had to endure pain, but she also had to die. She had to die to live. Rene would have to know that her second child's mortal life was over. This unfortunate detail still had little effect on her decision. Now you go on to your room and think this through. You come back when you are ready. We aren't going anywhere. We have been here going on 100 years, and we don't plan to retire anytime soon. So take your time and think of all we have said. You need to realize not only what you are giving your daughter, and what will be taken from her as well. Tori smiled and stood as if to say, "You can go now." Rene didn't remember any goodbyes. She simply got up in the haze of this information and left their unbelievable home. The night air hit her when she stepped onto the sidewalk. It seemed to open her up to the real world. She smelled the smells of the city. She heard the sounds of the few vehicles that passed on the street, and she went to her room to dream of a life where no death could touch her sweet daughter. She dreamed of the peace it would bring to herself. Would there be stability for Anna? Would there be any semblance of a normal life? A traditional family and friends would be stripped from her, but she would have a life. Nothing that could harm her would ever touch her. She would be as timeless as time itself. It was a simple decision. Rene had brought her into this world, and in this world, she would remain. Anna would know health, beauty, and life for all of eternity. One might see Rene's decision as selfish, but she did not. She saw it as a way to end her own endless torture and ensure Anna's well-being for the rest of forever. Rene did think about it, as was suggested. She made list after list with the heading, Pros versus Cons. The pros always outweighed the cons. Continuing a natural life would only lead to Anna's ultimate end, which was unacceptable. Whether by accident, disease, or the natural progression of the human condition, death would be her fate. If Rene must walk this path ahead of Anna, she would gladly do it. She would be the test subject for this experience. She would do this for her child, whether Anna realized how critical it was or not. That's all I have for today. I hope you come back again. There is much more excitement ahead. Until next time, bye for now.